Good afternoon. Welcome to the Labor Forum. You're listening to WRFG 89.3 FM in Atlanta. It is a super breezy day today, so if you're wearing a hat, hold on. And of course, we want to welcome all of our listeners who are listening on their radios, those that are listening on their computers, your mobile devices, and those of you that are watching on the Labor Forum YouTube channel, where you get to actually see the guests and yours truly in the studio here at WRFG. My name is Diane Mathowitz. I'm a retired auto worker, and I've been the host of this program for about 3.5 years now, following in the footsteps of Gary Washington, who initiated this program back in 1986. So it is one of the core programs here at WRFG where we give voice to workers that talk about the issues and the solutions, not just in the workplace, but in the communities where we all live. As you know, the opinions that are expressed on this program may not necessarily be the board, or those of the board of directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. So I'm really excited about today's program. Last week I was at a press conference. It took place on the steps of the Capitol, and it was with musicians, and they actually had musicians playing and many speaking, and it's about a campaign called Listen Up. So we have two representatives of the Atlanta Federation of Musicians Union here in the studio. Sitting next to me is Karen Berz. She is a violinist with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. She's also an arranger in the pop music industry. And next to her is John McCutchen, a well-known folk singer. Turns out the very first concert that Karen ever went to was one with John. We're finding out all kinds of interesting things here in the studio. Anyway, he is the past president of the American Federation of Musicians Local 1000, which is the traveling musicians local, and that's where Pete Seeger and probably John Fromer and I don't know who all else.
Sweet Honey in the Rock and Ani DeFranco and a lot of Soleil, a lot of great musicians.
Are all members of that part of the American Federation of Musicians Unions. Anyhow, they are both here in the studio to talk about this Listen Up campaign, and so it's a national campaign. So I'm going to start off by asking John, just what's Listen Up all about?
Listen Up is a response from the Musicians Union to a growing trend in especially the film, but the television industry as well. Well, let me put it in terms that your Georgia listeners can understand. Georgia is one of many states that has legislatively created tax credits to attract film production to their states. I believe last count there were 37 states that have such tax credits. And the idea is that the production and in most cases the post-production likewise be done in the state. And all the other entertainment unions have agreements that create a national standard for this industry. The Musicians Union was slow out of the gate. There was a portion of our history where there was a lot more infighting than looking forward. That changed about 3 or 4 years ago with new leadership, and we're playing catch up. You know, that's admitted. Mm-hmm. But we are calling on these independents to bring the musicians into the fold, along with all the other workers of film. And the Listen Up campaign is targeting Lionsgate Entertainment. And
it's a big.
It's a big. Believe it or not, it's listed as an independent, but it's one of the big dogs out there. And anybody who has driven around Atlanta over the last 3 or 4 years has no doubt seen the trucks and the signs to the shoots, because the Catching Fire, the Hunger Games second film, was done here. Divergent was done here, the upcoming Divergent, and the upcoming Hunger Games is being done here. All this stuff, it's not that it's just not being done in Georgia. Most of this music is being offshored.
Okay, so for those of us who don't exactly know, we go to the movies and we see the whole thing, and we obviously hear the music that plays literally pretty much throughout the whole film.
Mhm.
It adds tension, it adds ambiance, it adds mood. But when the movie is made, that music gets added afterwards. So could you describe how that works?
It's called post-production. And in the old days, a production house would have an in-house music department. And that would all be taken care of side by side. And today, what has emerged is, we're kind of engaged in a big race to the bottom. Mm-hmm. How can we spend as little money as possible to get as much as we can? So they will just hand a chunk of money to a composer, say, give us a result, give us a soundtrack. And that composer can do whatever he wants with it. So it's not, they're ceding control of the music, and that music is generally taken overseas. What we're calling on is for these production houses, Lionsgate in particular is a target of the Listen Up campaign, to bring the musicians under the same kind of standards that the other entertainment unions enjoy. And then we wouldn't have a state-by-state competition where, say, oh, well, Georgia now requires us to do the music in Georgia, so we're going to move to Alabama for the next film. Mm-hmm. Having a national campaign is going to make us bring everything up to that industry standard.
Okay, well, it strikes me that there might be some folks out there who think of musicians as artists, and so what is it that, and how is it that musicians came to join a union, and what are the benefits of being in a union for musicians? I'm going to toss that one to Karen.
Thanks, Diane. A musician has a skill, and it is a skill like an electrical worker and anybody else that is represented by a union. There's an artistic side to it, no doubt, but there's a skill that's involved. And too often, unfortunately, skills can be taken advantage of. So that is why the union is so important. And I should point out the American Federation of Musicians is the largest union of musicians in the world, representing 80,000 or so musicians across the United States and Canada. You will come in contact with AFM members through all facets of music, including film and television, which John so eloquently talked about, but electronic media, broadcasting, and of course live music. When you go to see the Atlanta Symphony, those musicians are represented by the AFM. When you hear music in live concerts and everything from rock and roll to jazz to hip hop to everything, there's that representation. And I should point out that musicians who are not union members also benefit from the work that the American Federation of Musicians does. They address issues of fair pay, benefits, pension issues, all of those things that are in the best interest of the musicians who are providing the wonderful music behind the soundtracks in the movies. So there's definitely an international effect there, and then locally, definitely our union is stepping up as well as the national union. We have a very dynamic secretary, other offices at the union here who are leading this campaign. And I should point out that music is not a partisan issue. Everybody loves music, and they love to hear music in their movies and in their earbuds and in their concerts.
And we are at a radio station.
And we're at a radio station after all.
We love music.
So whether or not musicians are members of the union, we certainly hope that they are, because it's the industry standard. But I had the great pleasure of meeting Georgia legislators who are responsible for the tax credits and the tax incentives for these movie making for people like Lionsgate, and Representative Ben Harbin and Matt Hatchett and Margaret Kaiser and all the people who are instrumental in getting those tax breaks for both production and post-production, like John was saying. They all love music, and they love Georgians to have jobs, and that was the whole force of their campaign. That was the whole impetus of the tax incentives, and we share stories about the first concerts that we went to. We were talking about mine and going to John's concert, but Representative Harbin told me, the first, I think it was Atlanta Rhythm Section or something, the first concert he went to, all of those, they love music, and at the same time, they want to give Georgians work. And we are musicians in Georgia, and we are being basically cheated out of the work that those legislators of both parties have worked so hard to ensure.
Let me ask another question on this. Because we've been talking a little bit about Lionsgate, and so if either one of you have any kind of figures about how profitable Lionsgate is and how much they've reaped in terms of the tax credits they've gotten here in Georgia or maybe across the country.
Well, unconfirmed estimates, but in the neighborhood of $100 million of tax credits nationwide.
From Lionsgate alone?
Yes, from Lionsgate alone, and that's nationwide. And that's a lot of money. $100 million is a lot of money. The president of Lionsgate, we're not talking about something that's not doable for them. Music production and soundtracks is a tiny percentage of the total cost of making a movie. The president of Lionsgate received a 95% salary increase to $13 million, and that's one person's salary. And we're talking about a very small percentage of the total production costs. And furthermore, there are examples of people doing the right thing. You don't have to look any farther than Atlanta and Tyler Perry, because as far as hiring musicians for his movies, he has an excellent track record of hiring union musicians. So it can be done. There's really not an excuse.
And to put a real figure on this, over the last 4 films that were done by Lionsgate, it's estimated that the preliminary figures show that musicians in this country lost about $10 million total.
From Lionsgate outsourcing jobs.
Lionsgate outsourcing these jobs overseas, and really to build upon what Karen was saying, it's not just the musicians who are being cheated out of this money. It's Georgia taxpayers who are being cheated out of this money. I was saying before we started, almost as a joke, maybe we should get a discounted ticket here in Georgia, but we're sort of getting a double whammy. We have we're paying this money to have stuff done that is then being used to shift it overseas, and we've got increasing prices at the box office. Well, for instance, last weekend, the new Kevin Costner film Draft Day opened up. This film took $5 million of tax credits from the state of Ohio, where it was filmed. It's a Lionsgate film, and they outsourced all the music to Macedonia. It's unconscionable that a company that was the 5th highest grossing studio in the box office in 2013, with more than $1.1 billion in ticket sales, is not willing to play fair, to play by the rules that were set up, that all Georgians agreed to. And we're hoping that people who hear this will be outraged. Democrat, Republican, union, non-union, it doesn't matter. We have a history of incredible music in this state. From the very first $1 million record ever sold by Fiddlin' John Carson, from right here in Atlanta, all the way up through the ASO, which has 26 Grammys. They're not good enough to score a film, to Johnny Mercer and Little Richard and Ray Charles and James Brown, R.E.M., the Allman Brothers, Ludacris, Outkast, Ma Rainey, Sugarland, the Indigo Girls. What's wrong with Georgia music that they don't think it's worth doing their business here after we've given them money to assure that it will happen?
And that is a really good way to end this segment, and we'll go right into this promotional piece that we want to hear, and we want to make sure that everybody comes to our fundraiser this Saturday night, so please listen up.
Get your dancing shoes on. Calling all Chicago steppers, all those lovely rare classic soul and R&B. WRFG is hosting a second ball at the Blue Mark Studios on Saturday, April 19th.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about the importance of
is located at 892 Jefferson Street, Northwest Atlanta, 30318. There will be dance
Because we're only going to have about 8 minutes.
I also want to say this is not an abstract idea. This is real workers and real musicians. Maybe your neighbors.
Plus, Michael Berkeley and beverages will be available. And only
It's not happening in LA someplace.
All proceeds to benefit your station for progressive information and handpicked music. WRFG 89.3 FM. Tell your friends it's time to party with WRFG. See you Saturday, April 19th at the Blue Mark Studio for a grooving, moving, and dancing good time. For more information, 404-523-3471. Come and get your steps and ball on.
We're back here listening to WRFG's Labor Forum here on 89.3 FM in Atlanta. With me in the studio are two members of the Atlanta Federation of Musicians, and they have been discussing this issue that probably everybody, or probably 99% of you, had no idea was even going on, and that is that all these film companies that you see, barricading the streets and causing jams, and stars running around at different restaurants, and everybody excited that these companies are receiving big tax breaks from the state of Georgia. In other words, they're receiving money out of your pocket. And yet the musicians are here to say that the sound, the music that's in these films is being sent overseas or and all around the world, frankly, for a much lower cost production, and depriving your neighbors, my neighbors, people you may know who are musicians of all different kinds, of every genre of music, from getting a job. So we've been listening to Karen Berz and John McCutchen describe this. Both of them are musicians. Karen is a violinist with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. John is a folk singer, and both of them are activists in this Listen Up campaign. So I want to just do one more question, and then we're going to get into how it is that the listeners who are listening can help with the Listen Up campaign. So there's one more question I have is, again, I think a lot of people don't realize, or may not realize, that musicians are like full-time workers, that there's rehearsals and performances, and it's multiple hours of a day to do this.
Yes, and multitasking, I might add, too, because in this time, especially, self-promotion is very big, and so you have to spend a lot of time off stage. That one performance that you see requires hours and hours of practice time. It also requires time for anything from instrument maintenance to keeping up a website to self-promotion. All of those things are involved in being a successful musician. It is indeed a full-time job. And if you'd like to add anything about that, John.
Well, I'm lucky because I'm a soloist. But my friends who, every bass player plays in 4 bands.
Right.
It's like having 4 girlfriends. I don't know how they juggle that life. It's one thing, the front people, but the people who are in the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra are playing in the orchestra, certainly, but they're also playing in cantatas.
Yes.
This Sunday. In churches for the Easter celebrations and for the Holy Week stuff, and for Hanukkah, and there's people who are teaching, as Karen does, in her non-performing time. It is terrifically difficult to make a living and to provide for your family and your future, which is one of the reasons I joined the AFM when I was a young man. It's one of the smartest things I ever did. If I was a dentist, I would have joined the American Dental Association. If I was a lawyer, I would have joined the American Bar Association. This is the one organization whose only job is to care about and advocate for musicians. And this is what this Listen Up campaign is about.
So maybe in these last few minutes we can talk maybe very little specifically and about how listeners and those who are really passionate about the future of music, you know, that it be quality and that the people who provide it are not living on the margins of society, barely making it. Certainly it seems to me that all those who contribute to the beauty of life, whether it's artists or musicians or dancers or whatever, add to the culture, really need not to be struggling. They need to be recognized, and part of that is getting a decent wage and benefits. So if you wouldn't mind giving some information about how people can find out more about this campaign and what it is they can do to help.
Well, Diane, our listeners can go to a website called listenupnow.org. listenupnow.org. And there is a petition that you can check out and see if that's something like to sign your name to. We certainly hope that you do.
You can add your name to 8,000 people who have signed that petition just since last Thursday.
That's the impact that's been made in the event that you supported us there. And you can also like the Facebook page, which I believe is Listen Up. Is that correct?
Listen Up or Listen Up Now.
Listen Up, Listen Up Now. Like our Facebook page. I believe there's a Twitter feed as well.
It's the Twitter feed is @ListenUpNow1. And you could also go to the Atlanta Federation of Musicians web Facebook page like that, and we're going to start collecting, a community solidarity group of people who are not members of the union but who want to support this campaign that is not just about musicians getting work, because there's residual. Anytime someone has a job, it ripples into the entire community. It means that your grocery store is going to get some of that money, and your tax base is going to get some of that money. The roads are going to be better. The schools are going to be better. This is all about building a community that's based on people being paid fairly for jobs that this state believed were going to happen.
I think that is just the core thing. Again, there have been so many people on this program, and we hear over and over and over again, and it's every kind of corporation. It can be an auto company, it can be a fast food company, it can be a big box retailer. Every single one of them reaps incredible amounts of money. Their CEOs are paid astronomical sums, and yet every attempt is always made to make the people who actually produce the product, sell the product, distribute the product, literally live on beans. I mean, just going from hand to mouth with no security. And so I'm really happy that we've had this opportunity to make sure that everybody is aware that as the song that starts this program off is we do the work, and musicians do the work of providing fabulous quality sound and lyrics and the songs that we sing that kind of like mark our life passage. And it's really important that every job that improves society be fairly compensated. Do either of you want to add like 30 seconds of something? And
I want to thank you, Diane, for bringing it to a personal level the way you just did, and it really is. We have the leg up in that our legislature in Georgia has supported jobs for us here in Georgia. They have provided opportunities that Lionsgate and other companies are not taking, and it's a personal level. These are you and me and John and neighbors next door. It's not somebody out somewhere else. It really is an issue that affects us directly, and jobs for Georgians.
And one of the reasons this is a national campaign is so that musicians across the country and taxpayers across the country and communities across the country are treated fairly. So hopefully your listeners can check out the listenupnow.org page.
Because this is a national petition.
It's a national petition, but also go to the Atlanta Federation of Musicians page, and we'll be in contact with how you can become directly involved. There's going to be some direct action stuff, and there's going to be some pressure that needs to be brought to bear.
I know that we've been talking about Lionsgate, and because it's sort of the focus at this moment. But do you know how many other film production companies are here in Georgia taking advantage of these tax credits? Do either of you have any idea?
I couldn't give you.
No. I know that, I mean, they talk about it all the time. You read articles in the newspaper about what a booming business it is. Studios are being built everywhere and all like that. And so I know that, Georgia seems to be seen as a very, good place to come.
Good place to do business.
But it does seem just remarkable that when you take into account how important the music is to a movie, a film, a television series, people remember the theme songs. There's just all so much.
There was music in films before there was dialogue.
Yeah.
Because they
it's been there longer since people have been talking. Yeah. It's from the very beginning of this industry. It has been elemental, fundamental, and we're just asking that we get what we paid for.
And we, as the people who are going to the films, as you said, the range of talent in Georgia and all the other states as well, the range of talent they have, there is no reason that these talented folks are not the ones that we hear when we go to the movies.
Yes.
I want to thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And tomorrow, listeners, we're going to be talking about the situation at the post office, specifically this question of whether or not Staples gets to install post offices with non-union people in their big box stores. So please tune in tomorrow when we talk with the postal workers. This is Diane Mathewitz saying goodbye for today. And thank you so much for tuning in.